Hello everyone and welcome back to Whisky Wednesday. Apologies in advance if I look a little tired. I've been travelling up and down to Scotland in the space of a day. It's been a very long day, very good one, but I'm here recording this so that you can all watch it tomorrow, which will be Wednesday. Here we have the newest Campbeltown festival release, the Glen Scotia 9-year-old unpeated Fino sherry finished single malt. 56.2% ABV, natural colour with no chilled filtration, and just does all of the fun stuff that you want a Glen Scotia to do, including this one is about the sound of Glen Scotia. There are a couple of QR codes, if you want to freeze it and take advantage of that, feel free to. Pretty sure it just shows you like what is on offer at Glen Scotia. There's one on the back of the box as well, and that beautiful kind of Campbeltown view of the box. Quite cool. Really love the packaging on this one. There's kind of like lavender purple with the yellow to represent the Fino. I think that's really, really classy. Before we talk about this one, we'll talk about last year's release, which I didn't review because I didn't really enjoy last year's one. When Glen Scotia released these products, I doubt they release it with the idea of pleasing everyone, because that is an almost impossible task in any industry. But yeah, it was peated white port finish. And I thought that something that is both peated with a very delicate finish with something like white port, it should either be not necessarily a finish, but like maybe full maturation or a significantly longer maturation, or no peat at all, and let that white port shine through with that already salty coastalness, gingeriness that you get from Glen Scotia. But anyway, that was last year's one. Tried it on numerous occasions in so many different bars, and even at a tasting. And I just couldn't get my head around it. It didn't really sit with me at all. And the 8-year-old peated Pedro Jimenez release, which I think was the year before, I think that was 2022. I just finished that whiskey maybe last weekend or the weekend before. The most powerful, barbecuey, driven, intense Glen Scotia I've tried for a long time. It took me probably 2 years actually to finish that bottle of whiskey. You'll see this one is rather empty. I haven't drank all of this. I went thirds on a bottle with two colleagues of mine. They're both Glen Scotia fans too. May is a very expensive month. It's only going to become more expensive because of all these new releases that are coming out. But nonetheless, I've acquired some of them and they are over there ready to be reviewed. So in the next 2 weeks, you'll see some even newer releases from some much loved distilleries. But nonetheless, let's crack on with this. Here is the colour of the whiskey. It's a nice, just tame, almost yellow colour. You could call it golden. I've only tried this once. That's a lie, I've tried it twice. Once when we split it at the shop, and then the second time when I got home on that evening. But it's been in the glass for about an hour. I've just had it kind of just sat here with a little lid on top. Ooh. And I will say, the first thing that loads of people started mentioning, because it is on the back of the box, is this lemony citrus note, which you do get from Fino sherry matured most things. I recently did a tasting with the 2021 batch of Oban Distillers Edition, and my god, it's probably not just the sherry finish on that, which is also Fino, but that whiskey just smells like peach and mango. The finish is a little bit more kind of classical Oban. It's a bit earthy and a bit spicier. But if I could bottle the smell of Oban Distillers Edition, I would, because it's one of the most tropically alluring things in the world. With this, however, we are dealing with, I'd say, a much more intense style of spirit. Glen Scotia is a little bit more intense compared to Oban. Apologies for your snoring in the background. Our dog has just decided to fall asleep. And yeah, there is that lemony thing, but there's some really nice kind of kitcheny, herby, like spice rack stuff going on with it too. Two of the key things I get, which are a little bit more unusual, there's almost like a very delicate rosemary smell to it. And even a little bit of things a bit more intense. There's like a turmeric-y smell, there's a garam masala smell to it as well. Very fragrant, delicious things that you want to cook with. There's a lot of that in here. There's nice hints of vanilla. There's a little bit of that lemon citrus thing. There's a little bit of orange rind. classic Campbeltowny, salty, crystallized ginger stuff. I should state too, but the prior maturation, I believe, was all bourbon casks. Apologies, folks, I haven't... There's that snore. I haven't particularly gone into detail. Yeah, initial gentle maturation in first fill bourbon, and then with a 6-month finish in the Fino. So I don't know if there's any other sherry in this, but it isn't. It's just all bourbon to Fino. There is something a little musty in there, but I don't particularly see that as negative. It's almost... I don't know if it's just a dunnagey sort of smell, but there is an element of like wet earth, like wet wood, petrichor sort of thing. A damp day in Scotland, essentially, with a nice glass of whiskey at the end of it. It is a little bit busy on the nose in terms of alcohol, so like don't really throw your nose in, because 56.2, most of us who watch these sort of channels will be used to that, but it is a bit prickly. But yeah, summaries like herbaceous, ginger, vanilla, kind of dunnagey, soft flavours. Very, very, very different to last year's release. But let's taste it and see where we're at. The initial arrival is rather dry. Now this is the first whiskey I've had today, but it isn't the first whiskey of the week or anything. I was in the pot still and the Bon Accord last night and tried some incredible stuff. But the initial first hit of this with that Campbeltown spirit and Fino sherry and first fill bourbon at cask strength, even just for 9 years, the initial approach is a little bit dry. You kind of feel the alcohol pull quite a lot of moisture at the tip of your tongue and the side of your cheeks. However, if you keep moving it around, you're going to release more of that kind of mustier, funkier, dunnagey warehouse thing to it. The lemon thing isn't really there anymore. I still get the ginger thing. There's a huge, right now anyway, there's a huge waft of, on the finish, of like treacle toffee and vanilla. That's very pleasant, with that little bit of coastal salt sprinkled throughout it. And interestingly enough, once you've had that on the finish, it does make an arrival both on the nose and on the initial taste too. The second sip was nowhere near as dry. There's something about this that reminds me of bonfire night, and I don't know what. Because it's unpeated distillate, but I'm almost getting something a little sulphury, but in a way which is beneficial. It's really backing up the saltiness on the finish. Can Fino sherry be sulphured? That's a question I don't know the answer to, but this does have a very soft sulphury thing. It might not be sulphur, it could be something else which I'm mistaking for it, but it is there. The more you sip it, the more salty and briny this becomes. It reminds me a lot of like Scotch Malt Whisky Society Glen Scotias that I've had. Really powerful, spicy, drying, cooking spice, herbaceous. I do like it. I like it significantly more than last year's one. I will say I'm not falling in love with it. It is a very, very nice whiskey. But I think overall that's going to get an 8 out of 10 from me. I think that's the same score I gave the Ardnahoe last week, sorry. It was either an 8 or an 8.5. I really should write these down again to take note of them. The whiskey I've got coming up next week though might be one of my favourite things that's been bottled this year. In fact, the next 2 weeks worth of stock are 2 of the nicest things I've bought this year, and both bottles were below 60 quid. I think this was 65, but we split it between 3 of us, so it's quite cheap really. But yeah, overall I'm going to give that an 8. It has flavour profile that I like, and it has delivery that is very memorable, but I just don't know if it's my favourite of this style. I don't know if it's my favourite type of Glen Scotia. But nonetheless, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next week. Cheers.